Hi, everybody. Great to be with you. I'm Dennis Prager. And I will go straight to my guest, the president and founder of Geopolitical Futures, a private intelligence service. And how do people get to know about it? Through our website, DennisPrager.com. I have spoken on many occasions to George Friedman. The reason is his extraordinary knowledge, insight, original insights into world affairs. George Friedman, welcome back to the Dennis Prager Show.
I'm glad to be back.
So you're in Portugal right now?
In Lisbon, yes.
Did you say interesting, yes?
It's an interesting yes. I mean, this country is doing fairly well compared to most of the other countries in Southern Europe.
That's fascinating. That is not what I expected to hear. I always think of Portugal as sort of the poor man of Europe.
It has been. It's still relatively poor, but it is picking up velocity much faster than the other countries in Europe. It's got a kind of center-right government, and has great relations with Britain, and is very sympathetic to Brexit. It's interesting to be here.
You think there could be a Portexit?
Well, I think they could very well wind up kind of a pivot, because as Britain pulls out of the market, Portugal has an historic relationship with the British. They've been very close, and that relationship is warming up tremendously. So they don't like the Spaniards at all, don't trust the Italians.
Everybody hates their
really
neighbor. Don't you? That's a rule of international affairs.
Well, these guys will go farther to the Germans if everyone else. So, it's not what I expected to see. The past has been fairly gloomy.
That's right. Yes, that's what I've sensed when I've been there. Anyway, let me go to Korea. You've written about this, and I am very interested in your insights. There are so many questions to ask that I can't meld them all into one. So let's go separately. Do you believe that there is a scenario, or at least that with some likelihood, that Kim Jong-un would in fact denuclearize his country?
I think he would. His price would be, however, with the withdrawal of American troops from South Korea and the end of the defense relationship. And the South Koreans simply won't do that. They don't trust North Koreans that far. So he can do it. His price would be unreasonable to the South Koreans. The Japanese would go nuts. The Chinese would be delighted. But I just don't see it happening. I don't think we can get there.
That makes a great deal of sense. How do you know that that is what he would demand in a quid pro quo?
Well, if you're giving up your nuclear weapons, you're giving up your guarantee of regime survival. If you want something equally significant from the South Koreans, you don't trust the Americans because they've got 30,000 troops and a lot of aircraft in South Korea. It makes you very nervous. Just as their nukes make us nervous, that's what makes him nervous. So that, I think, would be his quid pro quo.
He has not said that, though, correct? This is what you surmise.
He has not said anything on what he wants in return.
Right.
He has signaled that he's prepared to give up his nuclear weapons under the proper circumstances, but I suspect he wants that negotiation to take place before or during Trump's visit.
What about just a guarantee that the United States would not invade his country unless South Korea were attacked?
That would be the equivalent of him giving a guarantee that he wouldn't nuke Los Angeles while keeping his nuclear weapons.
I see. Okay. I see.
We don't trust him. He doesn't trust us.
Uh-huh. Well, if you're right, then it seems to me there's no chance for anything, and I don't think Donald Trump should make space on any shelf for a Nobel Peace Prize.
I don't think so, but there's one thing that will happen here. You know those interminable negotiations we had with the Iranians?
Yeah.
It won't be a no. It won't be a yes. It'll be a next meeting, and on and on and on. And I think that's where he's really headed for. He keeps his nuclear weapons. He indicates that he's prepared to negotiate. No one can find a basis for agreement. And maybe the U.S. will get bored like last time and get in.
So that's what you think, that's what spurred his remarkable visit to South Korea.
I think he understands that the isolation in North Korea is dangerous for him. I think he wants to break out. And I think he's a very smart guy who's watched the United States in action against the Iranians. I think Iran has been his model. And he realizes two things. The U.S. has a nuclear phobia. And second, it is prepared to do an extended negotiation while finally giving in to some vague assurance. And watching the Iranian negotiation, he figures he can buy 2-3 years on this.
He could buy 2 or 3 years, but he's still under sanctions. What's he buying?
Well, the sanctions he can get around. There are a lot of black marketeers that are going to go in. We have a belief that sanctions will cripple countries. On rare occasion, it does. What the sanctions really do is it enriches, tramp steamers that are going to bring stuff in. It certainly gives the Chinese a chance to make headway in North Korea. The two countries don't really like each other. The Russians will sell them goods. The willingness to violate sanctions is the overwhelming weakness of sanctions. Now, I know that everybody is saying that North Koreans are indicating how badly crippled they are. But I think in point of fact, they'd rather we think they're crippled because they're not.
All right, so he goes to South Korea, and what does he tell? This is what's interested me a lot because I've watched North Korea my whole life. What did he tell his people with regard to his visit?
Well, I think it's hard to tell. I mean, what he basically said was what we heard. But he's making it sound like the United States and the South Koreans are capitulating in the face of his remarkable nuclear weapons. So it's his people he's saying, well, of course they're welcoming me. What choice do they have? And even the United States doesn't dare to do anything. So he can position himself to his people as kind of the winner without winning anything.
My sense is that aside from himself, the power in North Korea resides in the army. Is that fair to say?
I think it's fair to say, plus a lot of bureaucracy, the senior bureaucracy in agriculture and places like that. But, yeah, it ultimately comes down to the military.
All right, so I was wondering the whole time, how do they feel about losing a certain degree of prestige as well as real power if he really did denuclearize?
Well, he would denuclearize, but he would have to get something substantial in return for it, which is why I'm talking about the U.S. troops.
Right, I get it. So
he could then say that, I got him out of there.
Right, that's correct. No. If he could do that, he wouldn't have to explain himself to anybody. He would be an actual genuine hero in North Korea. That's understood.
Yeah, he would have pulled off an extraordinary maneuver.
Right. But if that is the quid pro quo, then as I said earlier to you, there's not much reason for optimism.
I don't think there is. I think because the U.S. Look, the one who really would want this, along with North Korea, is China. Getting the U.S. out of
South Korea, that makes China the great power in East Asia.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The Japanese, on the other hand, would probably go nuclear themselves.
That's right. Okay.
They have the ability.
Correct. So that's okay. That's clear. So, all right, I understand that. I want to go back to Iran. In your view, what did North Korea learn from the Iran deal that Barack Obama made?
First, he learned that the United States has a phobia of nuclear weapons. That in spite of the fact that if North Korea launched one, they know we would obliterate them, and they really aren't crazy. They don't want to die in a nuclear holocaust. We nevertheless have zero tolerance for that. Therefore, the mere threat of having nuclear weapons, even if you don't have them yet, will get the Americans to the table.
All right, hold it there because I want to go further on that. Speaking to one of the great experts on international affairs, George Friedman, president and founder of Geopolitical Futures, a private intelligence service that you could subscribe to and really learn about the world. There's information up at DennisPrager.com. I am Dennis Prager, and we return momentarily.
In America, you have a right to be stupid.
Okay, everybody. Right before I get back to George Friedman, this hour's announcement is on behalf of the Prison Fellowship people and the Angel Tree Camp, sending a kid whose parent is in jail to summer camp. Listen to this.
Because these are children who would not have the opportunity to go if it was not through donations. And we're asking for the $200 is less than $15 a month. That's all it takes to send a child to camp. So to give a child an opportunity to step outside of that label that is placed on them the other 350 days a year, to remove that label, come to camp, and just have people believe in them, and for them to be able to be a kid and not suffer for the crime that their parents are in prison for. We actually feel like they're the silent victims of crime because they're labeled and then they don't get the help that they're needed. Through Angel Tree Camps, that's what we're doing, is we're giving them the opportunity to be a kid and to look past their parents' label.
All right. There's a banner up at DennisPrager.com, and it's a very worthy charity. Otherwise, I wouldn't be bringing it to your attention. Or just call 855-240-7725. This is a beautiful way to help America and help these kids at the Angel Tree Camps. All right. My guest is George Friedman, and he is the founder and president of Geopolitical Futures, a private intelligence service. We're talking about Korea. Already, I think my listeners are clearer about what is happening. Before there's any jubilation, I just want to repeat very briefly what George Friedman said. Kim Jong-un might well denuclearize North Korea, which people would be very happy about, but we don't know what he's asking, and Mr. Friedman contends that he is will ask for American troops to leave and for the military cooperation agreement with South Korea to be annulled. That won't happen for so many reasons, some of which obviously were just given. All right, so that's now I want to go back to my question to you, which you were answering when we had to take a break. What did he learn from the Barack Obama agreement in Iran? And you said about our nuclear phobia, and you can get a lot of concessions if you even just have a program to make nuclear weapons. So are you saying that without that agreement, if Barack Obama had never signed that agreement, would that have made things easier with North Korea?
Well, if we had acted overtly to take out the nuclear weapons, if we had actually been able to get a powerful coalition to insist on deep inspection, I think he may have calculated differently. But the fact is that we showed finally in Iran, we wanted a deal, regardless of what the deal was, regardless of verification. The Iranians didn't so much want nuclear weapons. They understood there were limits. They wanted to back the U.S. into a corner. Because remember, right now, Iran is the dominant power in Iraq. It's operating in Syria. It dominates Lebanon. It's operating in Yemen. So what we were focused on was the nuclear negotiations. In the meantime, they've mousetrapped us. They have moved into a very powerful position in the Middle East.
And we don't have deep inspection.
Well, that's the case. Now, personally, I don't think they want a nuclear weapon. They've got what they want. I think that the Persian Empire building. And the Israelis are talking about the nuclear weapon, I think partly because of the American nuclear phobia. They want to reignite that. But they're facing the need to bomb Syria on a regular basis. They expect, the Israeli chief of staff of the IDF has said he expects to have a war with Iran within this year. And the Israelis are facing rockets from Hezbollah, rockets from Gaza, now rockets from Syria. They have a very serious problem. So while we focused on their nuclear weapon, they managed to move into an extraordinarily powerful position in the Middle East, and we haven't even begun to address that as a nation. We've left that to Israel so far.
All right, then let's go to that subject for a moment. Do you think the Israelis have communicated to the Iranians that if you let Hezbollah's rockets and Syrian rockets and Hamas rockets attack our populations, which is what they attack, we will attack you in Iran?
I think the Iranians are calculating that. I think Iran doesn't want to use the rockets. They want to use them kind of as a bargaining chip, a tool. But I think...
Wait. Forgive me. Wait. Sure. Bargaining chip to achieve what?
Well, what they want is a recognition of their domination of Iraq. That is their historic desire. They are in a position there. They want the Americans to concede the position that essentially Obama gave them when he refused to fight ISIS on the level that had to be fought. And they already have Lebanon under their control. They'll go either way in Syria. But they want a regional settlement of real reality on the ground. They want Iraq. They want never to have a war with Iraq again. Remember, there were 1 million casualties in the war they had in the 1980s. And that's their national obsession. So if they can maneuver this into concession by the United States, which I don't think they're going to get, I hope they don't get, they've got a historic victory.
What? I don't understand. What constitutes a concession by the United States?
The United States recognizes their sphere of influence in Iraq, promises not to subvert that, not to pressure them on that issue.
How are we subverting them now?
Iranian troops.
How are we subverting them now?
Well, right now, we still have some forces in Iraq. Right now, we are playing with various political factions there. We're not being particularly effective, but they want us particularly out of Iraq. And what little we're doing, they want us to stop.
Well, it seems to me that whatever we're doing is negligible. I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but Iraq is a Shiite country. They would, or well, I don't know. What aren't they? Aren't they the majority? Yeah, they're the majority in Iraq. So it's almost inevitable anyway. I don't know what America could or could not do, but we'll come back in a moment. There's a lot about the world to understand, and we're going to get to Russia. My guest is George Friedman, president and founder of Geopolitical Futures. You can subscribe to it, but get a sample, take a look at it. There's a link at DennisPrager.com, or go straight to it. It's in a private intelligence service, Geopolitical Futures. We shall return in a moment. You're listening to The Dennis Prager Show. You're listening to The Dennis Prager Show. I'm speaking with one of the experts in international affairs, the president and founder of Geopolitical Futures, a private intelligence service, George Friedman. Now, let's return to something you just said earlier. I meditate on this stuff during the break. You said that the chief of staff of the Israeli army said that there'll be a war this year, but you also said that Iran doesn't want a war because it doesn't want to be attacked itself. So do you think the man is right or wrong?
I think the Israelis will feel a need to preempt, and I think they will be attacked, certainly outside of Iran. Whether they'll go into Iran is doubtful. But I want to make one point, if I could. The Iranians regard the United States two ways: enormously powerful and incredibly unpredictable. They don't know how to read Trump. On the one hand, they're listening to the American press and dismissing him. On the other hand, they're watching his maneuvers in Korea, and they've got to be impressed by the subtlety that he shows. So if you are Iran you don't say the Americans won't do anything because he's seen them invade Iraq and conquer it. Not hold it, but conquer it. The Iranians worry about the United States. We tend to underplay our power. The Iranians don't. They know what we could do if he wanted to. And Trump, very cannily, I think, has made it uncertain for them. And the hope that everybody has is that uncertainty will curb them.
Yes, I think he's been masterful in this regard, but of course people are so preoccupied with his tweets that they don't understand what he does on the international scene. We finally have a president that our enemies fear. At least that's my take. I need, though, to get your understanding. Do you agree or not that there will be a war between Israel and Iran this year?
We're already in that war. I mean, there have been multiple airstrikes, covert operations by the Israelis.
Right, and no retaliation by Iran. No retaliation by Iran.
No retaliation, but you see the Israelis being very active in Gaza. They remember how last time many missiles, many rockets came out of Gaza aimed at Israeli cities, and the Israelis are being very preemptive there. So they have three theaters to worry about. Lebanon is one, Syria is another, Gaza is the third, the weakest. That's where they're most active, and a little in Syria.
But if Hezbollah shoots thousands of rockets at Israel and Israel retaliates, obviously mostly from air, and a lot of Lebanese will die, will the Lebanese, I know what they'll say publicly, but in their hearts, will the Lebanese blame the Iranians and / Hezbollah, or will they blame Israel?
There are many flavors of Lebanese. The Lebanese Christian community is appalled by what's happening. The Sunni community basically wants out. The Shiite community is, by and large, favorable, and they are the ones in control. So if there is a war and the Israelis have to hit these targets, we should also bear in mind they didn't do too well in 2006 when they had the same military problem. I'm sure they developed...
Who didn't do too well in 2006?
Israel. Israel's attack on the Bekaa Valley, where a lot of these missiles were located, were not quite able to shut down the missile attacks. The Iranians and Hezbollah have been very canny in how they use these. So it's not a slam dunk for the Israelis to do this. But on the whole, I would think that since 2006, when they had this war, they have really studied the problem and hopefully have looked at it.
All right. So we have the situation in Iran. What is in Syria's interest? It would seem that Assad is thrilled, obviously, to have Russian and Iranian protection, or he wouldn't be in power. Understood. But I can't believe that he's thrilled to have a war with Israel.
I don't think he has much of a choice.
Correct. I agree that.
He maneuvered himself into a position where, yes, he survived, but he's a client mostly of the Iranians. The Russians have minimal interest in whether he lives or dies. They're there to show their public that they're world powers. The Iranians regard him as a puppet. They don't particularly respect him. And he's hanging on. He's not a decision maker in this game.
Right. All right. So the next question I have for you is, what does Russia want regarding a war in the Middle East? George Friedman is my guest. I'm Dennis Prager.
Telling me
Dennis Prager here with George Friedman. I've had on quite a number of times over many years because of his knowledge and insight into world affairs. He's president and founder of Geopolitical Futures, a private intelligence service. We have a link to that at DennisPrager.com, or you can go directly. So my last question to you was, what does... We're talking about the potential war in the Middle East. We originally spoke about North Korea, South Korea, and that was very insightful and helpful. And now this prediction of the Israeli chief of their armed forces that there will be a war this year. What does Russia want? Is it in Russia's interest It would seem to me it isn't. It would. Let me ask you to bounce off this. Well, I don't know if it's simple, but this thought: Russia wants power and influence in the Middle East. Russia wants support in the Mediterranean, but Russia doesn't want a war. That's my assessment. If yours is different, please tell me.
I agree with you on not wanting a war, but it has two things that it does want. The first simple one is wants to appear to be a major power to the Russian people. As the economy weakens and standard of living fades, he wants to at least show that he's a player. And he picked Syria because it was a relatively easy place to make a fairly small investment. He wants something else, though. He wants to bog the United States down in a Middle Eastern war. I'll give you a conspiracy theory now. The reason that they used chemical weapons was that Trump said that he wanted to pull out of Syria, which is not a stupid idea on the part of the United States. But the Russians made a move that made it very difficult for them to get out of Syria at that time. The Russians were very happy while the United States was bogged down in Iraq, Afghanistan, and so on. It gave them room to maneuver. It doesn't want the United States to get out of the tar baby. It wants the United States to send its troops there, not in Poland, not in Romania, certainly not in Ukraine. So that very strange decision to use chemical weapons for no good reason came right on the heels of all the newspapers horrified that Trump wants to pull out of Syria. And the Russians looked at it and said, we believe that. We'll do this and keep him in. They loved the period in which the United States had all their troops bound up there so they could invade Georgia, and the Americans didn't have any troops available to counter them.
Wow. That's all I can say is wow.
I told you it was conspiracy
Yes,
theory.
you were right. That's what it is. Well, it does. It's funny because when this horrible event took place of the chemical weapons, my first reaction is, what did he do that for? I until this moment, I don't know neither do you. You don't know if it's true. It's your theory. But I never had any theory explaining why he would use these chemical weapons at this time against his own people. So,
when you remember the newspapers at the time about him fighting the Defense Department on withdrawing.
Yes.
And look at the timing.
All right. So the Russians.
They seem to be connected.
So the Russians are playing with fire.
The Russians are in serious trouble economically. Putin, I don't think, is nearly as powerful as other people think. He has people maneuvering against him. He has got to convince the Russian people that he's made Russia a great power. A lot of the nonsense about interfering foreign elections, the American elections, had more to do with domestic political interests, which is why they were revealed and they
Right.
were hidden effectively.
So what you're saying is
that position.
the average Russian would rather walk around thinking we're a world power than have good food.
Well, given that he's not going to get good food, he may be pleased by that. Look, we Americans, when the United States is performing well in the world, are pleased by it. Normally, it's not a choice between guns and butter. But for the Russians, he promised two things. He promised, first,
A restoration. Mm-hmm.
And the restoration of Russian power, the Soviet Union, in effect.
Mm-hmm.
He can't deliver on prosperity. So he has to at least try to show that he has made Russia into a great power. That's his calling card. And yes, Russians respond to the idea that they're a great power.
All right, so fine. That's what animates the Russians. What's your theory about what animates the Iranians?
Well, the Iranians see this as a golden opportunity. The American failure to combat the ISIS in Iraq led the Iranians, who hated ISIS as well, to come in and essentially take over the Iraqi army. Now, remember one thing. 1 million Iranian casualties in the war in the 1980s, the war between Iran and Iraq. Iran is obsessed with Iraq. Iran is obsessed with the idea that Iraq could recover in any way and threaten Iran. So the first thing they want is to occupy Iraq. The second thing they want is to make sure that the rest of the Sunni world is in chaos. And if you take a look where they are, in Yemen, in Iraq, in Syria, it completely boxes in the Saudis, which is their mortal enemy. So what they're trying to do is use the period when the United States is backing off with no other major powers in the region to establish their political power and military power throughout the region.
This is an odd question, but I'll pose it anyway. If the Iranians could have the following choice: hegemony in Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, boxing in Saudi Arabia, restoring a sort of Persian empire, or none of that but the destruction of Israel, which would they choose?
They would choose the former, because if they had the former, they really had a chance of the latter, too. In other words, if they had Lebanon, Syria, Iraq securely,
right,
they could really dream of the other one.
Yes, they're sincerely dedicated to the annihilation of Israel. I think people need to understand that.
Well, how sincere, but it's there.
It's there, right. All right, final segment coming up with George Friedman. I never have enough time with him. But at least let's go to Europe, where he's located right now. He's in Portugal. The link to his service, Geopolitical Futures, is at DennisPrager.com. Hi, everybody. I love clarity, as you know. That's the reason I have George, one of the many reasons I have George Friedman on regularly, president and founder of Geopolitical Futures, a private intelligence service for you to have the clarity of what's happening in the world. That's the service, Geopolitical Futures. So there are so many European questions I'd like to ask you. We've been now in the Middle East and in Korea. Is Brexit going to go through, or is it being sliced like a salami into little parts?
Well, it's a complex negotiation, but the Europeans that I've spoken to in this trip are now accepting that they're leaving. Bear in mind, this is the second largest economy in Europe. Many of these countries have them as a major trading partner. They can't afford to really alienate the British.
Good.
They must sell to them. And while they're posturing about how they're going to punish the British, underneath it all, they're very aware they're going to have to give the British what they want. They'll be in the free trade zone, but they're not going to have to put up with Brussels.
Next question. We read in the left-of-center media, which is almost redundant, in the United States and Europe, that we should be horrified at the victory of Viktor Orban in Hungary. What is your take?
I confess to knowing him a little bit and admire him. I mean, he's the first one who made it very clear that liberal democracy involves national self-determination. He won an overwhelming victory, and he plans to govern on the basis of what the public says. The Brussels bureaucracy is saying we believe absolutely in liberal democracy and national self-determination, but if we don't determine what we want, we will marginalize.
Right. So
frankly, I don't think Orban cares.
Good, and I'm very happy he doesn't. So what about all the descriptions of him as just this side of fascism?
Well, I spend a lot of time in Hungary. And the people who say that I don't know what fascism is, which is Hitler and stuff, these people, the fact of the matter is that 100,000 people demonstrated last week against Orban. None were arrested. The debate in public is robust. The problem, the reason the left lost is the people didn't want to vote for the left.
Thank you.
The left has lost all credibility.
Sir, have a wonderful time in Portugal, and I can't commend it highly enough that people take a look at the Geopolitical Futures. There's a link at my website. Thank you, George Friedman. Have a good trip.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. We'll continue. This is the Dennis Prager Show. Hello, everybody. Dennis Prager here, and I have in the studio a legend. I don't think I've introduced anybody as a legend. What do you say to that, David? That's a big deal. David Horowitz, founder and president of the David Horowitz Freedom Center. And I'll tell you why he's in the studio in a moment, because the publication, the ultimate, the 9th volume of this remarkable, extremely significant series on the left. Let me tell you about David Horowitz, and I don't know if he gets easily embarrassed, but so if you do, David, you could walk out or close your ears or talk to the living martyr or think about Beethoven's Third or horses, whichever comes more readily to mind. But David Horowitz has, aside from a first-class and keen intellect, which everybody knows, he has the rarest of traits. 92% of you know exactly what I mean when I say the rarest of all the good traits, and that is courage. And he's a fighter. The good guys don't fight. This is the greatest calamity in human history. Good guys fight when it's usually very, very, very late, and spectacular damage has occurred. Let me one more philosophical word before I have David speaking. People say, oh, good vanquishes. In the long run, good always wins. I've never found that to be comforting, ever. Because the words in the long run mean that over the course of a vast amount of time, staggering numbers of people have suffered because of the evil. It's because the good guys didn't fight sooner. The good guys didn't fight Hitler, so look at how much suffering happened. Yeah, Hitler lost. After how many million people did he cause? 6 million Jews and 44 million others? Oh, so it's a little odd to say, the good guys won. Yeah, sure. The good guys won, and, after how many people that the communists killed? 100 million approximately killed by communists. And then the good guys won. So it's not, it's a problem that the good don't fight. But he fights, and that's why I adore him. David Horowitz's 9th volume in his book, The Black Book of the Left. And he writes extremely compellingly. This is not academic prose. This is real English. And I will tell you, the volumes read swiftly. And it's like taking an advanced course in life. Because if you understand the left, you understand not just the left, but a lot about life and about good and evil, human frailty, and so on. The latest volume is the last volume, Volume 9, Ruling Ideas, the collective conservative writings of David Horowitz, under the title, The Black Book of the American Left. David, welcome back to the Dennis Prager Show.
Thank you, Dennis.
You're having the 30th anniversary of your David Horowitz Freedom Center tonight.
Yes, and for many years we felt like a voice crying in the wilderness because conservatives are too damn decent and don't understand the malice of the left and its destructive agendas. But I think that thanks in a small part to what we've been doing for 30 years, but in larger part to Barack Obama, and Hillary, more and more conservatives are understanding how grave this threat is. Just to take your point about the good guys win in the long run, I mean, we could be on the brink of the dark ages with an Islamic empire and these totalitarian leftists
dividing the world
and prosecuting. We now have in America, we have people prosecuted just by accusations. We don't have, lost due process. And I think I'm going to give this example of Al Franken, somebody whom I have no respect for, but he was a U.S. senator, and he was a comedian, and he did this to some people offensive, certainly inappropriate prank, but on camera. I mean, it's
right, exactly.
It was a joke.
It was a joke.
And he lost the Senate seat.
Yes, that's right.
With no trial, of course.
Right.
So the totalitarians are all among us. We have a motto at frontpagemagazine.com, my website. Inside every progressive is a totalitarian screaming to get out. This is much worse than the communists. I'm talking about the heart of the Democratic Party now. Because the communists, they classified you according to, your ownership of the means of production. So if you were a peasant who had a little plot of land, you were a kulak capitalist, and they killed you. What we have here is, in cultural Marxism, the same attitude. If you're white, you're guilty before the fact. If you're male, if you're heterosexual, all these are indictable offenses. And if they get enough power, they will stifle you. And we can see it on our universities. There's no free speech anymore. It's almost impossible to invite a conservative to a campus. There are none on the faculties, maybe one or two out of 200 or 1,000 professors. So they've wiped out the conservative viewpoint in our universities. And this is backed by the administrations. If you think of this woman at Fresno State who called Barbara Bush, the late Barbara Bush, a witch and the mother of a war criminal. And people say, how can that possibly be? Why? Because her faculty, her professional colleagues, they all support her. When Ward Churchill was saying that the victims of 9/11 were little Eichmanns, his entire department at Colorado and 1,000 professors signed petitions supporting him. People don't realize how bad things already are. And, the miracle is what I call Trumpism, that Donald Trump has stood up to this, and there are enough people who are still willing to fight for American values that he's our president. This book, this ninth book, Ruling Ideas, is about the two ideas that have ruled Western history for 200 years, right from the time of the French Revolution. And one is the American idea of individual liberty, individual accountability, that we are a nation that was formed by people from different countries, different languages, different religions. And so they agreed that people should be judged on their merits. It took 200 years to achieve the society we have today, where people are mainly judged on their merits, except if they happen to be women or blacks, where the only true skin privilege is the skin privilege that gets you into college with lesser scores than your competitors, gets you jobs in front of other people. But aside from the damage the left has done to the American idea, this is the most tolerant, inclusive, equitable country in the world. And the other idea is now, it's called identity politics, but it's really cultural Marxism, which judges people by their skin color, their ethnicity, their gender, their sexual orientation. So the white people are guilty before the fact, and black people who are allegedly oppressed are innocent even after the facts show that they're guilty. This is a very tragic situation for our country, and this book I've written is about those ideas.
The book is The Black Book of the American Left. Volume 9 is now out. It is the ultimate, the final of the 9 volumes. To understand the left, and this is not heavy plotting material. These are his writings. He has always written for the general public, and they're very accessible and fascinating. And ultimately, it is an alarm. So, a couple of questions. Here is. I'd like to bounce a few of my thoughts off you. It is when you ask, what does a Muslim believe? You can point to the Quran. What does a Jew believe? You point to the Torah and the Talmud. What does a Christian believe? You point to the New Testament, or in the case of the Catholic Church, Church Fathers as well. It's not as easy with what does the left believe? When we come back, because the music's on, I want you to answer. What would you say to somebody? Gee, how do I find out? I know how to find out. Or read the Book of Mormon. You know what Mormons. In other words, I consider leftism as a religion.
I was going to say that it is a religion.
Yes. So
That's
the question is,
right.
what is its holy text? Is there not one? Hold on. I don't want to interrupt you. I'm speaking to David Horowitz. His book and series are up at DennisPrager.com. You are listening to The Dennis Prager Show. What happened here? The computer messed up. Okay, fine. Okay, Dennis Prager back here. Just want to tell you about the cause that we have embraced here, Prison Fellowship. It's called Angel Tree Camp. It sends deserving children whose parent, I guess sometimes parents, but usually a parent, is in prison. It sends them to a summer camp to have a good experience. You want to play an example here? Okay, no, we can't, obviously. The computer isn't working. I believe in this. They get away from the city. They get away from gangs. They get away from drug dealers. They have a wholesome experience. This is all done by Prison Fellowship. Angel Tree Camp is what it is. And if you send $200, they get an entire week there. Obviously, your donation in any amount will help. 855-240-7725. 855-240-7725. Or just go to my website, DennisPrager.com, and click on the Angel Tree Camp banner at the top of the page. 855-240-7725. My guest is David Horowitz, the David Horowitz, the founder and president of the David Horowitz Freedom Center, and his new book is the 9th in his Black Book of the American Left. So I am trying to understand the left. A third of one of my books, Still the Best Hope, is about the left. And I remember trying to answer a simple question. For every religion, and you and I agree, this is a secular religion. It doesn't have to be a God-based religion to be a religion. And it's so easy to tell somebody, gee, what does Judaism believe? What does Christianity believe? What does Mormonism believe? What does Catholicism believe? What does Islam believe? But what does leftism believe? What text would you send people to, David? We need a microphone here.
Marx is, I wouldn't advise especially reading it, but in the 18th Brumaire is its title. There's this line: everything that exists deserves to perish. That is what the left is about. The left.
That's awesome. Hello, 1 minute. It's funny. I realized this on my own in saying everything they touch, they destroy.
That's the agenda.
So it's wow.
They have this. Look, it's a religion, or a crypto religion, progressivism, what we call liberalism today, Marxism, all of these. It's modeled on the Christian narrative. The world is a fallen place. It's full of oppression, but there is going to be a redemption. The difference is Christians, Jews who believe in a redemption, understand that the problem is us. The root cause of all social problems are individuals.
Fallen man.
Yeah, well,
as they would put it.
We are the problem.
Christians would put it.
But for the left, it's something called society. There is no such thing, society. It's just it's a noun for all of us. But the society is the villain. And they believe that they are the redeemers. So how do you redeem the world? Well, first you have to destroy this evil that's all around you. And you that's what you never can satisfy a leftist. They always find something new to complain about or something absurd. I was just looking there upset with Matt Groening for The Simpsons Apu. There's just nothing that they can't find fault with. And so all of their grievances and their unhappinesses, they project onto the world. And the revolution has to begin with a tearing down of the existing system. When I was a leftist, and I thought of myself as pretty benign. My partner, Peter Collier, would say to me, the left is driven by malice. And I'd say, what are you talking about? I thought I was an idealist. But I realized that you get up every morning and figure out how to undo the institutions. You never gave any thought to how to make a society work with problematic human beings, which is what we are. So that Marx phrase, it's just driven by this anger at everything that exists.
These last 3 minutes have been as illuminating as anything I've ever heard, and I've devoted my life to understanding the left. This was so significant. So are the roots of leftism psychological?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I sort of shrink from those.
No, I only ask.
But there are books.
No. I don't want you to. I'm asking it. I'm not affirming it. I just want to understand why would somebody wake up? Why would someone wake up like that when you and I wake up with the opposite? Thank God I live in America.
Because
given how bad human nature is, this is paradise.
Because they feel good about themselves when they do it. It's all about justice. They have all social justice, right? They're going to make the world bring heaven on earth. That's what it's all about, creating heaven on earth. It's the Pelagian heresy in Catholic history. Pelagius believed that human beings, by their own efforts, would bring about the kingdom of God on earth. The story of Babel, the Tower of Babel, it's the same story. You build a tower to heaven.
Right. So they really believe that improvement is a farce. Utopia is the aim.
Exactly right. I was taught that when I was a youngster, as an adolescent. We never were interested in any of the do-good projects, I mean, except as an instrument to organizing people. But yeah, you can't ameliorate the problem. You have to go to the root cause.
Then it does. Then it has to emanate from something that transcends reason.
It's all emotional.
It's all yes, exactly. Well,
which is why Hollywood is so left, because they're all about emotions. They have thought in their heads.
Do you know that somebody told me, and I have to, that a major, so I won't even say what, it's a household name tech company, sent out a memo that objectivity is a white idea.
Yes.
That would resonate, correct?
Yeah, because they're totalists. They want an absolute solution. They don't want to deal with the complexity of life at all. And they're like cartoon characters.
Do you know that the New York Times this week had a piece extolling the virtues of Marx? And it's a continuing series that they're having.
I do. We printed in front page. I wrote an article.
All right, hold on. Tell me when we get back, because I got to tell everybody about your latest book. Volume 9 of the Black Book of the American Left, Ruling Ideas. The books are up at DennisPrager.com. David Horowitz is my guest. We return in a moment. All right, everybody. You're listening to the Dennis Prager Show. And I learned a great phrase here. It's ultimately from Goethe's Faust, the great German poet, and his very, very famous novel of a man who sells his soul to the devil. There are operas on it, and it's very famous. Anyway, but it was taken by Marx. Everything that exists deserves to perish. That's what's happening to the West. hey, hey, ho, ho, Western Civ has got to go. They proudly say it. The giveaway, and this is why I'm angry at conservatives who don't understand the mortal threat the left plays. I'm angrier at the good people who don't understand the mortal threat of the left than I am at the left. I shouldn't be. I admit it's an emotion. I acknowledge when I emote. But when the president spoke in Warsaw last year and said we have to protect Western civilization and defend it, the New York Times and all of the left attacked him because Western civilization is a euphemism for white supremacy. You remember that, David Horowitz? I mean, that if that's not the giveaway, that you can't any longer say, Roosevelt said it all the time. He said Christian civilization, not just Western. And it was okay. David Horowitz, the great master of explaining what the left is and fighting them, has the 9th book. You can go to blackbookoftheamericanleft.com and
read the introduction,
table of contents,
reviews.
Right, you get
all the books.
David appears there in some beautiful outfits because he's a model as well. So it is really worth going to the website. Seriously, blackbookoftheamericanleft.com, or just get the book through DennisPrager.com. That's it. It's and there's never enough destruction. Look, Barack Obama said, we're 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America, and these middle-class Americans going back to their SUVs after the rally, to their air-conditioned and heated, centrally heated and air-conditioned homes, preparing for their next vacation abroad, are clapping for the man who just said, let's fundamentally transform the United States of America.
Obama hated America and betrayed us. The Iran deal is a perfect example. Giving nuclear weapons, which is what the deal is about, to people who chant death to America, death to Israel. That's what Obama did. He's a traitor. And there's no Republican who will say that. When the day comes...
Well, it wouldn't be effective, to be honest.
I agree, because they shine...
I'll tell you what I say. I say no president has damaged the United States as much as Barack Obama. That's what I say, and I think a Republican should say that.
And he did it deliberately. That's what people have to understand. Okay, I
don't even care. I don't care if he did it deliberately or not. Okay. It's irrelevant. If that's God's decision. My decision is to fight those who are destroying my country.
Yes.
That's how I look. What did you say, Sean? What? Okay, fine. All right, so let's go. So we return here. How do you explain, in light of what I just said, how do you explain conservatives who are having such a hard time with the president and indeed can't even support him?
Look, if I can single out Jonah Goldberg, this is narcissism. What these never-Trumpers are doing is saying what good boys we are. They don't understand that there's a war. We are in the midst of a, hopefully it will fail, attempt at a coup d'etat. There's no other way to describe what Brennan and Clapper, the heads of our intelligence services, Obama, Hillary, the corrupt Obama Justice Department has done. They tried to stop the election, a legitimate election of Trump, and they're trying to undo it as we speak, and they're using all kinds of extra legal means to do it, and of course they're exploiting legal means as well. This is a war over the survival of the American idea. Identity politics is racist. It's anti-American, fundamentally anti-American, because it subsumes individuals in their caste positions, their skin color, their ethnicity, their gender, things you can't change, which is the antithesis of the American idea, which is that people need to be judged for who they are regardless. We used to say it in elementary school. regardless of race, creed, or
yes,
or
I know
religion.
it's being undone. All right, we'll be back in a moment. David Horowitz, my guest. I had Jonah Goldberg on this week, and we had a very good dialogue. But we differ. We differ on we differ on Trump. Okay. Anyway, Blink Home Security time, ladies and gentlemen. Imagine the panic that came over this dad. He was working late, gets an alert on his smartphone that his motion-activated Blink security camera picked up something. He opens the Blink app on his smartphone, sees a silhouette of a man peering through his kitchen window. He calls 911, alerts the police and his wife. Preventing situations like this is why Blink has sold over 1 million motion-activated security cameras. It's an amazing thing. The price is terrific. So I have an even bigger discount for you if you use if you go to them by writing in blinkprotect.com/Dennis, blinkprotect.com/Dennis, an extra 10% off. Hi, everybody. Dennis Prager here. I got to memorize that line. Everything that exists deserves to perish. But it's not overstated. He needs his mic on. It's not overstated about the left. Think about it. If this isn't a giveaway, and it isn't, I am watching people watch pure nihilism with regard to human beings with the male-female issue, telling kids they're not boys and girls. You know, the Boy Scouts of America have now just changed their name.
Yeah.
Drop boy.
Well, of course.
It just happened.
It comes from their totalist view. If society has to be totally remade, which you can see in everything that they write, everything exists deserves to perish. You have to annihilate it in order to bring about the millennium, the heaven on earth.
That's why go ahead. You want to
why
read
do
something?
leftists kill 100 million people? They never think about that.
Never.
Where's their compassion? And because it's not about people, the left. It's about this idea, this totalitarian idea that you can remake the world into a perfect place. And their self-esteem depends on that, and it generates this hatred.
And their happiness, presumably.
The biggest hate group in America, well, of course, is the anti-Trump hate group, but it's the left. Everything they do is hateful. They want to destroy people, their character. They want to destroy you. Conservatives don't go after the jugular that way. But leftists
by definition, we would like to conserve. Conservatives
are realists. This is a big problem.
Yes, that's correct.
These
Realists.
are delusional, and everybody on the left is delusional. They think they're on the right side of history. History has no side. The Greeks had and the Romans had a much more sober view of the world. It was all about rise and fall. I think it was the Jews who introduced this idea of
linear history.
Of a linear history. Yes. But I always liked the Scipio Africanus, who was a Roman general. When he burned Carthage, he wept because he knew that would happen one day to Rome. That's the classical view. But these people think we're on this upward ladder or whatever it is, and it's intoxicating, and it causes you to hate what you see in front of you. How can you hate America? Such a great country. It's like nobody's oppressed in America except maybe children who've chosen the wrong parents. The kids can be oppressed. But we know, black people all over the world want to come here. They'll risk their lives, the Haitians, to get here. Because people who don't have what Trotsky called their brains glued up by ideology can see how great it is in America for black people.
Yes,
It's so
right.
insane.
Yes.
This phrase, white supremacy, these people should be in mental institutions who use it. You had 8 years of a black president, 2 extremely corrupt attorney generals, black, a liar, and Susan Rice, who was the head of the National Security Council. How can you call America white supremacist? It's insanity.
My guest is David Horowitz. The latest and last volume of his series, The Black Book of the American Left, is out. And it's the greatest explanation of the left in detail and the various aspects of it. You could go to blackbookoftheamericanleft.com or just go to my website and see the book. But you could read some of the stuff from the book at his website, blackbookoftheamericanleft.com. So here's another puzzle. This was very illuminating. Do you grew up in a communist home, literally a communist home. Now, I believe that the reason you left is there was an inner voice, even a conscience in you that said, wait a minute, this is wrong. But you and I are trying to convince people that this is wrong. Is there a percentage, not just of liberals, but of actual leftists who can be turned around morally? Because that's what it is. It's a moral issue.
It's a good question. I think it's very difficult. Look what it took for me. I mean, I had to have a friend murdered by the Black Panther Party. My turn was heavily influenced by the Vietnam War. The left got its way, defeated America, forced America to withdraw. And when 2.5 million peasants in Indochina were slaughtered by the communists, there wasn't one protest. And that taught me that that's when I realized the left is driven by hate. They hate America. There has never been, or at least not in my lifetime, an anti-war movement in America. It's always an anti-America movement. But they delude themselves with, they're very good at the language, social justice, peace. And the biggest problem is conservatives. And that is, I remember when I came over from the left to the right, one of my first speeches I was invited to give was to the Cardinal Mindszenty Foundation in St. Louis. Now, Cardinal Mindszenty
right?
was a Catholic cardinal, a Hungarian, who, when the communists took over, instead of fleeing the country, he went to the American embassy and stayed there and was the symbol of the anti-communist resistance. So I said, well, this is true conservative anti-communist America. And they introduced me. It says, here's David Horowitz, a former civil rights activist and peace worker, or civil rights worker and peace activist. And I had to be, I didn't want to correct my host, but I had to say, look, if you had asked me what I was when I was a leftist, I would have told you I am a Marxist revolutionary, not a civil rights activist. I mean, of course, you exploit. I mean, if the society you want to destroy is having a problem on civil rights, you get involved. And of course, the peace thing was just anti-Americanism. The left has supported
David Horowitz,
every enemy of this country since World War II.
David Horowitz, my guest. Final segment coming up. The Black Book of the American.com. Or is it the or just Black Book of the American
Just
Left?
Black Book
Okay,
of the American.com.
Back in a moment. Final segment of this hour with David Horowitz, who understands the nihilism of the left. There are a few of us. There aren't enough people who do. You know what the left has done too, David? They have used the goodness of the American people they've abused it. That's what I would say is a better way.
Take advantage.
Yes, Americans really do care about racism, really do care about oppression, where it exists, if it exists. And so what they have done is they've played on that in the American people, and they have prevailed while tearing down, as what you and I know is the best country that has ever been built. And because humans are flawed, you and I appreciate it all that much more. That flawed people could make such a good place.
America is a miracle. And it's pretty unique.
By the way,
It is
to
unique.
Jonah Goldberg's credit, he calls it a miracle. He has a blind spot vis-a-vis.
Well, what he's doing, though, is he's showing, look, we've all read all these conservative books. We understand the principles America's based on, but we have a war here, Jonah.
That's the point.
You
yes,
can't take
we have
yourself
a war.
out of the war and then just throw bombs at the people defending this miracle. Otherwise, it's just an idea.
Well, it's a very serious problem that we have in not fighting. The good guys don't fight. I began the hour with you on that. The reason I'm having I could have David Horowitz on every week, as far as I'm concerned, because the issues are so clearly enunciated by him. But it's because of the publication of the Black Book of the American Left at blackbookoftheamericanleft.com. And once you read one volume, you'll read all 9. That's just the way it works. It's that well written. It's that accessible. And so I shouldn't end with this because I'm afraid of your answer, but I'll ask it nevertheless. 100% optimist or 100% pessimist, where would you put yourself percentage-wise?
Pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I think you're born optimistic
That's
and pessimistic.
Well, look, you wouldn't fight if you don't have optimism.
But you got to fight.
You got to fight.
Because if you don't
and you
fight,
do.
we'll
That's
lose.
right. You're a good man, David Horowitz. The book is up at DennisPrager.com. My friends, nice people, your neighbors, your relatives, nice people could believe things that do terrible harm. It's one of the sad facts of life. But he makes it clear why it is a fact of life. The Black Book of the American Left. I'm Dennis Prager. Thank you for listening.